Senator Bernie Sanders announced today that he will seek a fourth term in the Senate this fall, a move putting the best-known Senate progressive on track to win another 6 years in the chamber. The 82-year-old Vermont independent, who twice sought the presidency but failed to secure the Democratic nomination, is currently at the peak of his power. He chairs the Senate's top health care committee and continuously pressures the Biden administration on behalf of progressives. But is 80 the new 60? What do you think, Jess?
I don't think 80 is the new 60. I think there are a lot of members of Congress that should retire that are very old. But listen, representation matters to the extent that, you're representing the group of people you intend to serve. So there are a lot of people who are older in Congress who are representing the kind of mentality of older people in the United States who are no longer the majority of the United States. And listen, I am very critical of those people. Bernie Sanders, however, is not part of that group of people. He's 82, but he really represents what a lot of 20-somethings think, a lot of first-time voters think. And so I think that's good that young people have representation in Congress, even if it's by an 82-year-old. I think he embraces this kind of, message on Israel and has been way more vocal lately than ever before. That a lot of younger members of Congress, Gen Z members of Congress, are not that vocal about. So in some ways, he's doing a better job representing young people than the young people we have in Congress. And so he's great for that side of things. He does make time to see his grandkids and such. But it is amazing to imagine, okay, you're not retiring and you're fighting to protect people's retirement. But at what point, is someone too old to be a senator? At what point do we say, all right, let's pass the baton, let's train up some young people? I think Bernie Sanders investing his time in that rather than being in the Senate for another 6 years would be a good use of his time. But maybe he'll retire before, he completes this term. He's running for re-election. It's very likely he'll win. He's extremely popular in Vermont.
Yeah, look, obviously Bernie Sanders and I don't share each other's politics. I know that he's obviously a very well-liked and respected figure for people of your ideological bent, and I appreciate that not everyone ages the same. Despite being slightly older than President Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, I think, still inspires the idea that he's very youthful and energetic and combative. He does not have some of the struggles in talking to the media or talking at press, not that he does press conferences, but on committee hearings. He seems very active, involved. He's very able to easily string together his words. Some of the problems the public is expressing about Joe Biden, I don't think really apply to Bernie Sanders. That said, 82 is 82, and he would go up to 88, 89 at the end of this term. The Senate's a 6-year term. And, we have been talking a lot on this show. I think it's valid, the concerns the American people have about the average age of the members of Congress getting to be so old. What we just went through with Dianne Feinstein, being barely even cognitively there at the term that she was, at a time where she was, the representative of the largest state in the country. So I don't know. It's obviously, I don't think he is in good health. He should probably continue to release records to, make sure the public understands that that's the case. And I think age is an issue. Maybe it's not specifically an issue for him, however.
Yeah, I almost wonder if Bernie and Biden have a similar cognitive state, but it's a lot harder to give a speech when you're not saying what you actually believe and when you're fed a script. I think, Biden giving his public speeches, he's wavered on so many issues throughout his career and almost taken, complete 180s on some issues. But Bernie's been very consistent. And I think when you're speaking from the heart and you're saying what you actually think, you don't have to try and remember stuff in the way that I think Joe Biden is having to in a lot of these public, appearances. And so that's an interesting thing to consider, that authenticity matters when we talk about, someone's cognitive state. It's a lot more mental work to do the gymnastics that a lot of, the Democratic establishment does to stay on message, to speak on issues in a direction that maybe isn't what he truly believes. And so, I don't know, I think a lot of people seeing him give those speeches, it doesn't really matter the reason, but just when you see him stumble over his words, you see him kind of forget where he's supposed to be going, you see him with these note cards, with explicit directions about where to sit and when to talk and when to leave, you really question, do we actually have a president here? Or is he just a face and a body to represent, upkeeping the status quo or whatever the Democratic Party leadership wants? And then you question, do we have a real democracy? And so I think having younger people is important, but, are we getting better representation either way? Or if we had a younger person, yeah, they could give good speeches, but would they be doing the same bidding of the Democratic Party and the elites that want to maintain the status quo? I'm not sure, but I think one thing that's true is people like having Bernie in office, even if he's old, because he brings that authenticity.
Yes, of course he is, defending, speaking on behalf of Biden and the administration. I think in his sales pitch that he just made, announcing, that he was going to run again. He said, it's the 2024 is going to be the most consequential election of our lifetimes. Will the United States continue to even function as a democracy, or will we move to an authoritarian form of government? I think an obvious reference to the idea of Trump potentially winning that election. So, he remains completely, firmly behind Biden, just as other progressive or perceived to be progressive members of Congress, like AOC and the Squad, when push comes to shove, will talk about how it is existential that all Democrats come out in support of Joe Biden. Do you think that affects his credibility at all? And this is a genuine question, and it doesn't matter to me. I'm saying, does that affect his credibility with young progressive people to be, so strongly in support of a figure that they have been accusing of genocide?
For sure, yeah. I think there's definitely a ton of young people that are like, all right, Bernie, we get it. You're old. A lot of people have theories that he was threatened into resigning or threatened into suspending his campaign. The way that the Democratic Party has operated in a way to quell Bernie Sanders' leadership and then to have Bernie Sanders vow his undying support to the darling of the Democratic Party doesn't make sense to me. And I think a lot of people question that, but can take it with a grain of salt and say, okay, yeah, he says this stuff, we don't like it, but also he's the biggest advocate for better labor conditions in the United States, for better wages, for reducing wealth inequality, for ensuring that, we have a green future and a sustainable economy. And I think young people really care about that stuff. And we can say, okay, your role as a senator is to really push those policies forward and make sure that that narrative is heard. And we're okay with that being your role, even if you support Joe Biden, who we don't support. And so I think it's really making that mental separation and saying, it's probably better than the alternative of who we would get in office if Bernie were to retire altogether. And so I really think that's Bernie Sanders' bread and butter, is talking about those issues that affect young people when we talk about climate, but also about the economy, about being very pro-labor and very critical about the wealth disparity we see in the United States. He is the senator that's always asking the hard questions and bringing that up. And I think we'd really like to see him, train more people to do exactly what he's done. I think we'd like to see Warren Gunnels work for someone else upon Bernie Sanders retiring, or train people to do what he does. He's essential in the Bernie Sanders camp. And, I think his legacy will be a permanent one. But, I think there's a lot of people that are not happy with him, pledging his support for the Democrats when he doesn't see eye to eye with them on so many policies.
Thank you, Jessica. More Rising right after this.